The World Economic Forum is best known for its annual meeting in the Swiss ski resort of Davos, where business leaders, politicians and a sprinkling of Hollywood stars rub shoulders each January with an ambitious commitment to improve the state of the world. Today we're on the banks of Lake Geneva at the Forum's year-round headquarters to meet the man who first started the meetings almost 40 years ago, Professor Klaus Schwab. Klaus Schwab, the Forum is a unique success. What sort of animal has it become, and what sort of leadership does it require of you?
Today it's mainly an organization which has a great impact on the global, regional and industry agendas. So the main leadership requirement is the capability to absorb from everybody in the world, politicians, business community, what's really, what is our utmost concern, and then to translate this knowledge, this feed in from so many sources into reasonable programs, task forces, initiatives and so on.
A lot of people will be fascinated to know where Klaus Schwab actually comes from. You were born in Germany in 1938, just before the start of the Second World War, in Ravensburg, which I think I'm right in saying is on the border with both Austria and Switzerland.
More with Switzerland,
right,
but also Austria. It's in this triangle of three countries.
And what sort of upbringing did you have? What were your parents like?
My parents both were of Swiss origin, and I grew up in Germany just during the wartime. And of course it had a great influence on me, particularly since my parents and I, as a small child, we could commute to Switzerland at any time to see that there was war in one region and peace in another region, and you just had to cross the line. That had a great impact on me. And
what do you think the legacy of that is?
The legacy is that I was already during my school years very much interested in what you call reconciliation, dialogue. Because we had to create a new Europe based on reconciliation and dialogue. And I think that shaped my life.
At 19, you pursue your education in Switzerland, not Germany, graduating first from the Institute of Technology. Then there's a fascinating period in your 20s when you collect doctorates in both mechanical engineering and economics, but at the same time you appear to be an assistant to the Director General of the German Machine Building Association in Frankfurt. What's going on there?
I was very interested in machine building and engineering, but I felt I had to complement engineering also with economic, business-related education. So I mixed the two, and I was very fortunate to probably have the intellectual capabilities to do such education in a very short time.
And well mentored through that?
Yes, of course, my parents were in a very good situation. And I always had good mentors, good people at universities, those who mentored me for my doctoral thesis and so on.
Yeah.
So that was a great time.
But also, I mean, you graduate from Harvard in 1967, and almost immediately you become a board member for the Swiss engineer Sulzer. I mean, this is real fast-track stuff, isn't it?
It is, and it has a funny story. I graduated from Harvard. I wanted to go actually with one of the big consultancy companies when I got a phone call from one of the Swiss tycoons in industry who told me, look, I just sold my company and I merged it into a larger entity. You just come from Harvard, you know all those American management methods. Why don't you come and take over the responsibility for the merger?
At age 28?
Yes.
On the board?
And when I look back today, I think I did some things right, but many things I would do today differently based on the additional experience which I have.
What would you do differently?
I think I would not look so much for, let's say, schematic solutions. As an engineer, of course, I like schematic solutions at some time. I would look much more for pragmatic solutions.
Let's cut to the chase. You decide, just as you in fact become a University of Geneva management professor, you decide that you're going to launch the first Davos Symposium in 1971. But again, it's not the symposium we might have now. This is about teaching American techniques to European management. That was the first one, correct?
That was the first one. And actually, I felt that there was a gap in management methods. I had my experience and my relationship. So the chairman of the first meeting was the dean of the Harvard Business School, Dean Baker. So actually, it was a 2 weeks management course.
And how did it go?
It went very well, but of course, it was very intimate, 440 people. Today we are 6 times more.
Sure.
So it was a different animal at that time.
And was it automatic that there would be a second meeting after that? I mean, what was the dynamic at the time?
No, I was fascinated to do such a course. And then after the end of those 2 weeks, people came to me and said, look, this is not only a management course, this is a fantastic platform for Europeans to meet. Why don't we continue?
It's now about corporate responsibility. We'll come on to that. But I imagine the conversations back then, in the context of the 70s and the 80s, were freer markets, trade, liberalisation. I assume that was your agenda, correct?
Yes, but don't forget, in 1970, I wrote for the German Association of Machine Building Industries a book on best practices in corporate management. And I think it was the first who at that time coined and created this notion of stakeholder theory, which means that companies have to serve not only shareholders but all the other stakeholders of the company. So from the beginning on, this was not only a management meeting, this was very much devoted to social and, I should say, environmental issues, because we were the first who gave a platform to the Club of Rome study, The Limits to Growth, which was very important at that time to raise environmental consciousness. Security
is tight at every Davos meeting, and in part that's because of the threat of globalization protesters.
No. This is a minor aspect. If you bring together over 30 heads of states and government, if you have such an accumulation, if you tell the people you cannot bring your bodyguards, then you have to provide them with the necessary security. So the terrorist aspect is a key aspect, not the anti-globalization aspect.
I accept that, but I do want to explore, if I may, the way in which the forum has been perceived over the years externally. And you will be aware that for much of the recent years, if you go into the letters page of, for example, the International Herald Tribune, there will always be people who accuse you of not being democratic. There's a perception that it's
what does it mean not to be democratic? We say we address ourselves to global decision makers. It's not everybody who can come to Davos. It's global decision makers, people who have been elected, people who have been appointed CEOs and so on. So it's a democratic approach.
What I'm driving at is the moves that you've made, the leadership decisions that you've made to open up the forum against the criticism that has often been made. I mean, you know, it is not so long ago that you were helicoptering staff into your meetings in Melbourne, 10,000 protesters outside. I mean, there's always been a slight air of conflict from those that perhaps have a perception of the meetings that you would not want. And I'm really driving at how you've been more inclusive, perhaps with the NGOs.
First, that was for me one of the most depressing experiences, because...
This is Melbourne?
Yeah, no, Melbourne and
2000.
Let's say 2 Davoses, 2000 and 2001, because I was one of the first, even before the anti-globalization demonstration in Seattle, who wrote an editorial in one of the leading papers, international papers, saying we have to give to globalization a human face. And then I was attacked, so it hurt me very personally. But if we go back, actually, I think we are now well understood. We had 2 years where we had those demonstrations. By the way, the only thing, the only damage we had was one broken window in McDonald's in Davos. That was all. But today, I think it's recognized that Davos is a multi-stakeholder platform where social entrepreneurs, which means people from the ground, the heads of all major global NGOs like Greenpeace, like Amnesty International, are involved.
You do, however, profoundly believe, do you not, that the power of governments is diminishing and that the role of business is coming to the fore? I mean, you write in Foreign Affairs, quote, "The limits of political power are increasingly evident, the lack of global leadership is glaring, corporations have become integral to the survival of governments and the political stability of nations and regions?
I deeply believe in the interrelationship between economic development and social progress. I also feel that governments today alone cannot address the global challenges, nor can business alone, nor can NGOs alone. What we have to do is to create platforms where the three main pillars of society, governments, business and civil society, could interact and confront the issues which we have on the global agenda.
What fascinates me, from my reading of your annual report, is that over the last 5 years, the Forum's income has increased by 72% to $100 million. And you've done that primarily by binding in big business as strategic partners to a greater and greater extent, and the fees have risen as a result. What is that dynamic? What is this organisation becoming for business?
We are the organisation which is preaching. We have no philosophy. We have we are independent, neutral,
sure.
But we have one basic concept, and the basic concept is the concept of corporate global citizenship. We feel business has to take a role today, a positive role in shaping the global, regional and industrial
So as a CEO, are we in a situation now that if I want best practice in this area, I've got to plug into the Forum?
That's what we hope. Not only best practice. If you want to solve an issue, if you want to contribute to solve an issue, like upgrading education in the developing world, like fighting AIDS at the workplace in Africa and Asia, the Forum is your partner, because the Forum connects you with the WHO, with, in the case of diseases and so on. We are the glue between the different stakeholders of society.
You see, it occurs to me what may also, and I accept that may be true, what may also be true is that you are a master of making people feel included. You're a master at taking people, whatever they may do for a living, and putting them at the edge of contemporary thought. The flip side of that is that if they're not involved, they're in a way excluded. Let me put you what a columnist in the Financial Times wrote. The essence of Davos is circles within circles, elites within elites. An invitation to attend only gets you to the first square of the board. The Forum is a masterpiece of dividing and conquering that leaves everybody hoping to occupy a better position next time. You're the master of demarcation is effectively what they're saying.
Yes, but the difference is that we don't make this demarcation on the basis of formalistic evaluations, rank hierarchy. We make it on the basis who is relevant and knowledgeable. So every group, every task force we compose is preceded by the question, who are the most relevant and knowledgeable people in order to create a solution for this issue. That's, let's say, selection criteria. And I can live with it.
Are you frustrated at the same time that you set up these Olympian discussions about really important things, but inevitably year after year there will be somebody who will say, look, you see again, no great leadership breakthrough in business or politics was achieved from that?
Yeah, but what would you do if the world would be without dialogue? Then we would be even more egoistic. The World Economic Forum is not a decision-making body. I think it would be completely wrong if at the end of Davos there would be declarations, that's what we want to do, that's what we have committed ourselves. So what we are is a platform for initiatives, that's what we are for. Giving each person, each participant the possibility to launch initiatives, to shape his own opinion based on the latest strategic insights.
Let me take you to the latest development, if I may, and I know you've spent a huge amount of time, personal time, on launching the new 24/7 virtual community for the Davos set. Why is there a need for welcome, as you've called it, the World Electronic Community of the World Electronic Forum? Password protected, I assume.
Just the global agenda has become so complex. And look at how we are doing things. When you talk about issues to find solutions like climate change, let's take a very specific issue. You have so many different conferences and you don't know anymore. It's too complex. What does really happen? So if you could create an instrument which would integrate everybody into a process, then I think you can create a tool which will be invaluable in terms of problem solving. So that's what we are doing. We are creating this tool. In some way it's a virtual ongoing Davos. And I feel that the face-to-face contact in Davos and the virtual contact will complement themselves and will make what we are doing much more efficient.
Forgive me, maybe it's my background in journalism, but when things get really tough and there's a huge amount going on, I would really like somebody to simplify it down for me, to take me through a clear track. And I'm not sure that the creation of a Facebook for business, which is in essence maybe what you're doing, is going to simplify an ever more complicated world.
You are right, and that's exactly the reason why we, in connection with this welcome system, we are also establishing what we call global agenda councils. We have identified the key issues on the global agenda, water management and so on, and for each of those issues we are now, together with the leading universities in the world like Oxford, Cambridge and so on, we are now looking for the best experts. So you have 100 issues, each with about 20 experts, and the idea is whenever you have a question and you want to be enlightened, you can go to the best expertise which you could find in the world through Welcome.
What I'd really like to know, and a lot of people watching you would probably like to know, is how do you schmooze leaders? How do you get them? I mean, is it flattery? I mean, the introductions you do are always great for them, or is it an intellectual engagement?
It's intellectual engagement. You can ask everybody. People would not. I mean, I'm never going to a cocktail or a social event, except music events. I'm an introvert. I'm certainly not a social animal. I think it's only the confidence which we have established, the trust is based on the intellectual input which we can provide.
And what about the human network effect? That if you get a CEO from a new sector, you can bet your bottom dollar that next year 2 of his rivals will have also kicked in?
Well, that works, of course, but it's not only rational, it's certainly also emotional. It has an emotional dimension. This morning I got a letter from someone who cannot come this year, who has been, who is now on retirement, and he wishes me all the best, and he says, look, I have been 11 times in Davos, and now for the retirement I have 3 friends, which will make it easier for me, and 2 of those I met in Davos.
Stay with us, Klaus Schwab, if you would. We need to take a break. You're watching Klaus Schwab, the man who founded the World Economic Forum from their headquarters in Geneva. Welcome back to the leaders from Geneva, where we're talking to the founder of the World Economic Forum. Klaus Schwab, thank you very much for staying with us. I spoke to a lot of your members before I came to see you today, and there's 2 big questions that come up. The first is they'll often say, how can I ensure that the forum will really have the disruptive youth of tomorrow, those that have the new ideas, those that are going to change sectors and markets for the rest of us? I know that you've got the young global leaders, all of whom are under 40 and all of whom are pointing towards that role. But will you always struggle to ensure that you're not an aging organisation, do you think?
No, that's such a challenge. But I'm very proud that despite the fact that in 71 I was the youngest and now I'm probably amongst the oldest, but the average age of all our participants has decreased and not increased, which shows, let's say, that we very well integrate young people. But it's not only to integrate, let's say, those young global leaders. Just take what we are doing now with our cooperation with YouTube. We have asked for reactions, for questions. It's the so-called Davos question. 750,000 people loaded it down, 750,000. They react. And all this opening towards wide circles of young people, but also opening to the what you call the Web 2.0 community. I think is a major factor to keep us young and dynamic.
I said there were two questions that people always want asked of you. The second question is who will succeed Klaus Schwab at this organization?
The institution will succeed. Let me explain. I think the success of the forum, that's not only the founder. I think it's the fact that I have built up an organization which now has over 300 collaborators. Two-thirds have a top university education. We all share the same cultures, the same spirits, the same commitment to our mission, improving the state of the world. I think it's a need for such an organization which guarantees best its sustainability in the future. The world needs a World Economic Forum.
Without doubt. But people like to see in any organization, and you know that's very true of the private sector, the line of succession. Where is your line of succession?
We are now appointing excellent top leaders. I see the forum much more like a McKinsey or a Boston Consulting Company, which means a top business service organization which unites as its top a very capable group of people with complementary talents and experiences.
I think you do yourself a disservice. People see this very much as one man's creation, Klaus Schwab, and they worry about what sort of organization it would be, because it relies on so much soft power, what sort of organization it might be under somebody else. Is there no more that you're able to say? I mean, was Tony Blair's admission onto the foundation committee an indication that perhaps he, for example, might take over?
No, as I said, we have a two-tier system, and I wouldn't exclude that someone of the foundation board will chair the foundation board in 10 to 15 years from now. My concern at the moment is to create a great managing board, and I'm making fast progress with it. I have to say, many people feel from the outside that I'm managing everything here in the organization. I'm actually today very little involved into networking, contacts and so on. I try to concentrate on the strategy.
Forgive me, I really don't mean to be rude. You're entering your 70s. When would you like to step down? When do you think maybe you'll move to one side? What time frame are we talking about?
First, I'm fortunate to have a very good health. I invite you to join me for the ski marathon in 6 weeks in the Engadine, so we can talk about it again. No, and I'm swimming every day, more than 1 kilometer, so I keep myself very fit.
Sure.
But to take your question much more seriously, I feel like an artist. My main work, and I want to concentrate my main work in the forum on this creative capability, it's an artist. And tell me, an artist never retires. If you go back into the history and look at good artists, they stay until they cannot perform anymore in a creative way. As soon as I cannot, it's not the age, as soon as I would notice that I cannot perform anymore in a creative way, I would retire.
You have a formidable reputation. 1 honorary professorship, 6 honorary doctorates, 12 national distinctions, including the German Merit of Honor, the Légion d'honneur in France, and of course a knighthood within the United Kingdom. How do you think other people perceive you?
I'm not interested how other people perceive me. I'm much more interested in what impact I have on other people. And as long as I know I have a positive impact, then I feel in complete peace and harmony with myself.
What do you think you're like to work for?
I think they suffer sometimes from, let's say, too many ideas, and sometimes also from changing the ideas. They would say I change the ideas, I would say I improve the ideas.
There's a Schwab line, a Schwab party line.
Maybe, but I think you see, I have been a professor I had a half-time commitment at the University of Geneva for half my life, for over 30 years. I'm very influenced by the academic sphere. So the management style in the World Economic Forum is a mixture between a management, a business style, an NGO dimension, because we are following a mission, and a academic background, an academic, let's say, culture. So I feel myself much more a professor than a manager.
Can I ask you, of all the setbacks that you've had, what taught you the most?
Setbacks internally, where I learned most is if you lose trust in people, give them only one additional chance, not more. Setbacks in terms of what I created, I would say I have been now active since 1975 in reconciliation efforts in the Middle East, and the fact that we haven't made more progress, I think, and particularly if I look at all the time which I invested personally into this issue, that's my biggest deception.
And of what are you most proud?
I'm proud of many things, but I'm most proud to have built an organization which now seems to be an essential element in the international cooperation system. And I hope that this will become a legacy and can continue. And not only I hope, I'm sure that because it's needed, that it will continue even if I wouldn't be active in it anymore.
Professor Klaus Schwab, it's been a pleasure to meet you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hobbs.
Next time, we're in Delhi to meet the co-founder of the Indian outsourcing giant Infosys, Nandan Nilekani.
Infosys has been beyond just being a company in India. It's been a symbol of liberalization, a symbol of what first-generation entrepreneurs can do, a symbol of how India can be globally competitive. So I think it's a whole lot of symbolism.
You've created that in a sense. You feel you've created
yes.
that.
We always taken the view that we have to change our society even as we create a business.